Teachers at Reddit, have you had a student confess their love to you? If so, what is the story behind it? One of my students, who was less than half my age, told me she wanted to kiss me. She said this in a very public place, while I was chatting with her and her best friend. After she said it, I just kept jabbering away about whatever while my brain went, wait, what? No, but I had a weird student who went around saying I was pregnant with his child. Obviously I had not done anything with this kid other than teach him in class, but I also wasn't pregnant anyway. Ask the wife of the president of France. He's married to his teacher. In high school, there was a TA who all the boys had a crush on. One day some girls cornered her and asked her if she realized how popular she was. She replied, I didn't even like high school boys when I was in high school. When Jay was doing my student teaching, I had this one student, 9 years old, who would refuse to talk to me. I thought the little dude hated me for one reason. One day I tried to start a conversation with him, and he started to sob and cling to my leg shouting, please marry me. Marry me please. I had a failing student who wanted to go to med school proposition me. She did get the D, but not the one she wanted. She was a minor model, very attractive, and in any other context I would have said yes. Japanese animators, write that down. Write that down. In a Buddhist university, where I was a teaching assistant to a Buddhist theology class, a monk in the making took a liking to me. I didn't get the cues. Just thought his friendliness and little gifts, mostly snacks, were entirely platonic. I was close to the monks at that school. The Mongolian monks gave me soda and offered me ramen when they thought the temple food was bad. So it didn't strike me as unusual. Similarly, kindred spirits type of connection. Other teachers' assistants warned me, but I genuinely thought nothing of it. Turns out he really did like me. It was terribly awkward and it did not end well. I teach undergrad college students, mainly freshmen. I had to change my name on social media about a year into working this job because some e-boy freshman I taught literally once found me on Facebook and tried to chat me up with the "whoa, this is so crazy. Now that I found you again, we're going to have to go out and catch up." I didn't even remember teaching him. To his dismay, I turned him down, blocked him, and changed my name on all social media. I had another student in a class that I substituted for a few times that would constantly chat me up while I was trying to teach. I had mentioned that I had a significant other boyfriend more than a few times, but he clearly wasn't getting the point. It came to a breaking point when he interrupted my lecture to tell me how much he liked my shirt from a crappy barbecue non-local joint. I turned around, said thanks, it belongs to my husband, a lie, and went back to teaching. I had a ring on that day by chance just because I like wearing jewelry. His table mate was dying. He had a front row seat to this kid's failed flirtation attempts, but this one was the icing on the cake. He didn't flirt with me again after that. Dunno if this counts, but when I was a senior in undergrad I made extra money by leading recitation sections for the freshman physics class. One student clearly didn't have much experience with girls, never happens in physics, and did the classic move of assuming that because I was paying attention to him and answering his questions, it meant I was romantically interested in him. This was of course announced with a ton of emails and FB messages in like 2 or 3 days, which made it amply clear he didn't understand that me talking to him about physics and being nice was my job and I treated all students the same. I basically told my physics prof supervisor what was happening and he was a little taken aback. I can't say that's happened to me before, but he gave the kid a stern talking to. Turns out said kid had also been reported by a female classmate to the Title IX office in that first semester. So yeah, he just really didn't get how to interact with women. Male uni professor. It's mostly just giggling Chinese girls and people wanting selfies. They're harmless. I've been asked out a couple of times. It's easy to turn down. I'm absolutely positive that fantasy would be better than reality. I'm actually a very private person. Had a couple of 3rd and 4th graders teased and or outed by their classmates in front of me. The one that stood out to me was this one 4th grade. One time after class, 2 terms in, his friend suddenly went to the teacher's desk and asked me how I felt about him. He was hanging around the sides and shyly looking over. I said he was amazing and nice and I like him as a student. The crush was pretty innocent at that age, so I think he liked that answer, haha. Nothing else came up from that. Grader who was super nice in class. My 4th graders are around 10 years old and are relatively short, so they're all babies in my eyes. Had a friend in high school who had an unhealthy crush and obsession with a female teacher. When he found out she was married, he threatened to kill himself on Facebook if she didn't go out with him. His mom and aunt tried to play it off as boys being boys, but he was forced to get medical help. I'm friend with him on Facebook and he seems to be doing well. Lives in a farm and enjoys his redneck lifestyle. Not quite. But when I taught 14/15 YO students, I was 23 at the time. On one of my last days at the school, a group of 3 boys cornered me and demanded that I choose which one of them I wanted as my boyfriend, lol. I was a mid-20s male who taught speech therapy at an elementary school and had a female student who was always really quiet when answering questions. Seemed shy and would get all smiley whenever I talked to her. I was talking to the speech and language pathologist about how I thought she knew the answers, but she was too shy or acting weird or something, and she goes, "Oh, it's because she has a crush on you, comma, but she's 9. I all made sense now, but I had no idea kids got those kinds of feelings so young. The next day I was walking by and saw her with her group of friends. One of them turned to her and said, "There goes your boyfriend." Her face turned red. She hid it in her hands and ran away. I think it's cute because kids that age don't know what those feelings are or how to handle them. But man, it blew my mind that crushes start so young. Weird. I used to teach at uni. Several months after the course had ended, I got a long text from my former student. Turns out she had a crush on me and then saw my profile on a lesbian website. So she decided to ask me out. It was very kind of her, but I said no. Deontology doesn't end with the course, haha. Plus I don't want a relationship with that kind of power dynamics. As a student I can tell you teachers won't suck your D after class like in porn movies. In the 10th grade, I had a lit teacher who was sort of an archetypical attractive, younger female teacher that sort of knew it and was a little risque with her interactions with the students. Nothing grossly explicit, but she would just let conversations drift toward the edge of appropriate bounds of schoolroom discussion, particularly given a room full of minors. Well, one day, the conversation was about how people fall in and out of love, and it naturally drifted toward the topic of attraction at later age. This one kid piped up and said, "Ms. Lit teacher, I would still do you when you are old." The room got deathly quiet and the student knew immediately that he'd ducked up. The teacher was in a bit of shock and had the student sent to the principal's office. The principal showed up a few minutes later with the teacher's husband, a science teacher at the same school, and had the student tell him what he had just told the teacher. As if this wasn't punishment enough, he still got a week of suspension. Years later, with the wisdom of age, I wonder if the teacher was also ever reprimanded for even letting a discussion get to this point in class. I has a college professor who married a former student of his. They were 20-25 years apart in age and they didn't start dating until she'd been out of his class for 10 years. I was a chemistry teacher. Her name was Jessica, I think. I remember she would constantly fail my subject and would always sing apple bottom GAARNs. I find it hard to believe this thread is so full of honorable rejectors. In uni, virtually every second tutor and lecturer was banging a student. She hasn't verbally said it, but she's also 7 and Chinese. I'm an expat teacher. Her English isn't good enough to verbally express it, but it's pretty obvious, though obviously harmless as well. All I can hear when reading these comments is "Don't stand so close to me." While I was student teaching, it happened to be Teacher Appreciation Day and I had a female high school student tell me they loved me. Talked to my supervising teacher about it and they wrote it off as being dismissive and gave me some tips about in case they were serious. Turns out they were. The student would try to go out of their way to get help from me, try to spend time alone with me. I was asked to help with an after-school play thing and they grouped us together and made it even more awkward. Thankful no moves were made, but it was really uncomfortable the whole time. On my going away card she wrote a sad note like, "You didn't tell me you were going away. I'll miss you." No, but I had a single mom give me a very obvious hint that she wanted to come by and help however she could during parent-teacher conference. Yes, many times. I also work in a preschool. When they say I love you, they mean it in the most platonic way possible. I also have to say I love all of my kiddos back. They are the heart and soul of my job. I had a girl in my grade 10 class who stalked me. First day of class I kicked her out for being disruptive. Had a word with her in the hallway and she broke down in tears. Sent her to the counselors to deal with whatever she was dealing with. After that, she just sort of glommed onto me, would come to my classroom at lunch, joined the extracurricular activity I coached, wait for me in the parking lot after school and watch me drive away. Final straw for me was that she somehow found out my unlisted number. This was 10 years ago when I still had a landline, and left a really bizarre message. I recorded it and emailed it to my AP. When she got to school that day, she brought me a gift bag full of stuff which I was afraid to open. I brought it down to the office. My AP, the counselor, the girl and I had a meeting during my prep period where the girl herself said that maybe she should be taken out of my class. As soon as I left the meeting to go to my next class, I was told she flipped out and was screaming at the AP and the counselor about not wanting to be removed from my class. I was required to park at a nearby park for the next little while and the school counselor drove me from there to the school and back to my car as they were scared she would do something to my car. She was placed in a female teacher's class after that and soon after she sadly tried to take her own life. I'm not sure what happened to her after she was placed at the children's hospital. I hope she got the help she needed. We did learn, though, that a similar thing happened between her and another teacher at her JR high school. During residency I had students for various projects. Now I am generally average and never had women throwing themselves at me but never had them running away. A student, grad school, was in my office, more like a shared closet space, a lot. She was way out of my league when I was her age. Later in semester she got very close and started cluing my oblivious ass that she was into me and wanted something. I still played dumb, like she was joking. My office conveniently got turned back into storage, and I was never alone with her again. A more experienced professor later told me it was very normal that some students gravitate towards professors they admire. And they really good looking ones have to be very careful and are constantly harassed and many actually leave academia. I think he called me ugly. I was teaching as a substitute teacher in a professional high school where most of the students were almost my age 21-22 because most of them were refugees or just in scholar failure. The students, however, were really happy to learn English and participated a lot. So I decided to give my email in case they had questions out of class. My bad. I shouldn't have done that. After my contract ended, boy from the class kept sending me messages asking for a friendship or more. He literally spammed me for a few months until I blocked him. It is such an awkward situation. Teachers, FBI is watching. Careful. Yes, had a young man who I helped every day at lunch. He was very far behind and needed tons of extra help. After working with him from 6th grade to 8th grade he was really doing well. I was proud of him, and it showed. So by the end of middle school he says, "Thanks for all your help. You are the best mom in the world. I love you." I was a 32-year-old male. We both had a good laugh though. In college I had a female TA whisper in my ear, "If you go on a date with me, I'll give you an A." Does that count? I'm probably out of scope and definitely flipped for what you were asking. But during undergrad I asked out the TA for one of my physics labs as I turned in my final report for the semester. Just hey, let's catch a show and a beer. Lab partner encouraged me. He rejected saying he can't date students, and I just ran with it in my shame. One of my life regrets was not clarifying that I was graduating the next week. Of course I've dated since then, but it would have been nice to have a smart one for once. That reminds me of the time I told my ex, who is a teacher, young and good looking, that there are deafs and pubescent boys in her class jerking off to the thought of her, and she absolutely lost it because she never thought of that. My first teaching practicum was in a grade 7-8 class of students who were learning English as an additional language. There were two boys who never spoke to me, and while they did have fairly limited English, They somehow managed to speak to other teachers just fine. On my last day, one boy told me that I was a beautiful singer and that he'd been watching my videos on Facebook. I guess he somehow creeped my very private profile and found some old videos of my performances at an open mic. For the next year, he would continue to send me messages on Facebook saying I miss you Ms. B and why don't you come visit? I never responded. It was both sweet and concerning lol. I wish I had a chance to teach that kid about boundaries and that playing it cool is a better approach to getting girls to like him. No. But about 5 years after I graduated high school, my English teacher found me and admitted that he had been madly in love with me while I was in his class. I had a slight crush on him during high school, but no clue that he dreamed of me. He had just divorced and thought it would be a fine time to test the waters. Yes, the girl wrote me a full-on love note. I took it immediately to my supervisor indicating my lack of knowledge of the student's interest or my interest in any way, shape or form in reciprocation. As a male in a high school I feel, the target on me is incredibly large. My super quite literally took the note, shredded it, said we would not speak of it again. I was not settled by this. I did have a talk with the student with my neighbor teacher in her room with both our doors open. It was a one-on-one conversation with the student, letting her know this was not behavior I was willing to accept and would move forward in our interactions as we have in the past. Me the teacher, her the student. Things ended up basically back to normal. This scenario was one of many issues in education that lead me to leave it. I don't want some young fool to ruin my life due to accusations and supervisors to not assist me because they don't want to deal with it or are uncomfortable themselves. Edit. Fat finger typo. In my last school there was a student who slept with the teacher. Word got out and the teacher was fired. IDK how he did it cause he would never confess how sexy she was or speak openly, so IDK. When I was a kid, 5 or 6, one of my dad's students came up to me and told me she wanted to be my new mommy and be married to my dad. So that was weird. Not a teacher but kid in my class jacked off and screamed her name. My dad was my mom's professor in college. A year or two after she left his class they started dating. 14 years apart and they just had their 29-year anniversary. On a more personal note, I used to teach at a boarding school and I was having a nighttime extra help session. At the end, it was this one girl who was really struggling after everyone left. She gave the whole X. I'd do anything to pass this class. I messaged another teacher who was downstairs to stick their head in and wrapped everything up ASAP. Sent an email to admin that night. Everything ended up fine. And I don't even know if she meant anything sexual by it. Wasn't going to take the chance. I teach middle school and had a student in the middle of class say, you know so and so has a crush on you. I honestly didn't even hear who she said. Anyways, I just said gross and moved on. This is giving me flashbacks of 1.5 months ago. It was a week before Teachers' Day and the student council decided that all students should write appreciation letters to our teachers. Well, our teacher was young, prob mid-20s, and she was sick and took leave for a week previously. I proceeded to write down something like, we were worried about your health and were glad when you came back. It sounded too wrong, especially in a boys' school filled with 13-16-year students, puberty at its peak. I taught high school for a couple of years. Freshman girls would smile and giggle and come up with silly questions to come up and ask me between classes while their friends stood there and giggled. No big deal. The senior girls were a different story. I'm married, happily, wear a ring, and was, as a male, extra careful to never be alone with female students, and it happened to make sure the door to my class was wide open. I had 3 straight up, and with very clear and explicit words, tell me they didn't care if I was married. They just wanted to have a sex. I reported each incident. I had one female student that would hug me constantly, even though I had told her several times to stop. I don't like other people touching me anyway, but this was super creepy. She would come up behind me and embrace me, even managed to surprise me with a full frontal hug once. I had reported this to administration each time, but was not believed. It's just a harmless schoolgirl crush, I was told. One day an assistant principal just happened to see her come up behind me and embrace me, like my wife would, and he immediately took her to his office. She was removed from my class and instructed to never speak to me again. It was so bad that the female teachers in the rooms close to me gave me their cell numbers to text them if I needed someone in the room. When I started teaching college, I have had girls flirt with me, but that's it. No, I'll do anything to pass situations, or I'm not in your class anymore. Things. They would flirt and I would completely ignore it, and it stopped. If you want to know where the real steamy behavior is on a college campus, it's the professors. Opposite of this, I had a university teacher come on to me. I admit when I asked questions in class I was giving her the eye. I really didn't think she'd notice it nor would act on it. Anyway, she started coming to my workspace asking if I needed assistance but would be rubbing my shoulder at the same time. This was definitely her shooting her shot. I honestly would have capitalized on the situation as she had a huge ass that I'm sure I could find some use for. I politely said nah, I'm good, as I noticed when she was close to me she had this strange odor. Totally threw off my fantasies I had created in my head. Oh well. I had a student write a love note to me on a foam ball. I was teaching in China at the time and the note was in Chinese. When I gave the ball to one of the Chinese staff to translate, she, the staff member, nearly fell out of her chair laughing. The student was 14 or so. I was careful not to be alone with her. It's treated very differently over there though. Her parents once dressed her all in red, traditional Chinese wedding color, and asked me to take wedding pictures with her. I didn't refuse many picture over there so as not to be rude, but I refuse those. This sub's questions are getting out of control. XD. Thank God I'm repulsive. Also basically at this point being with someone who is a young adult turns my stomach. I mean they haven't even started the trials of life, they are just children in adult bodies. She would wait for me in the parking lot after class. I had to start using the buddy system just to get to my truck without incident. The last I heard she's actually working in admin for my wife's company.